Right, hello, it's Laura here, and welcome to the Google Hangout. We're just waiting until 7 o'clock, and so I hope this works. Otherwise, we'll just have to see how things go on. Last time another one started, so I hope this is the correct one. If there's an issue, then just hold on and we'll restart exactly at 7. It's just I want to make sure that it's everything. So what I'll be doing is I'll be reading through the questions that you sent, so thank you for those. Some of you have put some questions as well in the question and answer on the screen, so I'll be referring to those as we go along. So we'll just sort of hang fire for, we've got 1 more minute, and then we'll get started properly. So I just want to say thank you very much for doing the course. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've had some really interesting comments made, and most people seem to have enjoyed it. I'll refer to some of the sort of the general issues that have been raised as well as we're going along. So we'll just see how things work out anyhow. So I keep looking at the time in the hope that this is working properly and that you can hear me and see me. And obviously this will be broadcast on OU Live. Sorry, OU Live, that's an Open University thing. Sorry, it'll be broadcast on YouTube. So you should hopefully be able to catch up on Live. So I'm just checking the time again. I'm hoping this is all working. And that everyone can see. So we'll go through, and I'll just check the. So okay, so I think everything's working. Fingers crossed. Some, everything. So what I'll do is I've had some questions, and I'll go through those, and then, as I said, I'll look at the questions that people have sent in. So occasionally I'll have to put my head down so I can read the questions properly. So apologies for that. I know it doesn't look fantastic, but we'll see how we get on. So let's just have a look through then. So the first one, I thought we'd just cover some general comments first about the MOOC and how you've got on, and some of the sort of more general issues, and then I'll look at specific things that you raise. And then what I'll do is after each section, I'll just look on the right-hand side of my screen where I can see your questions that you've posted just now, and then I'll answer those as we go on. So I hope that's going to satisfy you. I'll just be here for about half an hour, so yeah, we'll see how we get on anyhow. So looking at the questions, so Charlotte here says about the course is helpful in guiding the correct way of preparing and building on my online learning skills. And then we have Steffi saying about she expected it to be useful but slightly dull, but actually found it really fun. So I'm glad about that, Steffi. And we have Teresa, who said about she liked the way the course leads you gradually through the process of online learning, so that it's very gentle. So there's some sort of more general comments about the course. I think certainly what we've tried to do is to introduce people to the notion of online learning in quite a gradual way. Within education, we often refer to the notion of scaffolding, often related to concepts or knowledge and how we sort of build that up slowly. And I think that's what we've tried to do in terms of this course. In terms of the range of it's definitely sort of quite fun. Again, that's part of the, the idea is rather than focus on one area of learning, sort of reading or writing or whatever, what we're trying to do is create a sort of a mix. And I think particularly online, when you're at your computer, then it's really important that you have a range of activities to do. Otherwise, I think it risks becoming quite sort of dull. So I'm glad you found that the case, Steffi. We have tried. I think it's probably worth commenting now about some of the sort of online activities that you've done. Some of those, such as the Chinese language app, the Open Science Laboratory, they're sort of mixed purpose. So some of those we do use with our students at the Open University, but others are more for learners like yourselves, who are sort of the general public to use. And so the experience may not be exactly the same as you would if you were actually studying and at a distance university. So I think it's pointed, these things like fun, like the O Fortuna game, something like that wouldn't necessarily be part of a module. But other things like the Open Science Laboratory, some of those experiments that are on there are used as part of our sort of learning experience for our students. So it varies a lot. So we're trying to give you an idea about what online learning is, but it won't necessarily replicate exactly what it's like. So I'll just look now at a few of the comments and we'll just come to see. So we've got one from Tiara saying about who can see my post through the course? How about its privacy? So there is as far as I understand, there is a privacy statement on FutureLearn about what will happen with the things that you post. We do collect data about how learners navigate through FutureLearn, and there will be some sort of research based on the posts, for example, to see how people enjoy it. They often will be anonymized, so it's based on the post itself. And if we do wish to do research on that, then we need to seek permission to actually do that. So it will be private in the sense that it's not shared outside FutureLearn. And if it is looked at in terms of quality assurance for people like myself or research, then a post that you put up will be purely anonymised, so it won't be able to trace it back to you. And as I said, we do collect some information about, say, the number of times one person posts and that sort of thing. So but it is private, so rest assured on that one, Tiara. So I'll just click on that one. Yep, so we've got rid of that one. Sorry, I didn't mean it quite in that way. And I'll come on to the next one, which relates to the experience of online learning. So we have a comment here from Artie, who says online courses can be invaluable to mature learners who are able to sort of structure their learning, and it's particularly important at the moment with the expense of education. Something someone's commented on a Q&A board. And I think one of the other things is to do with missing face-to-face conversation with other learners, and I think that's something as well that Marie has commented on, saying as well that being part of a Facebook group and discussions are always really helpful, and also the time spent. And I think that's true. I mean, one of the big issues about distance learning or online learning is that you are often sitting at your computer, as most of you will be now. And so the chance to interact with other people is difficult. That's why we often build in things like forums and discussion boards and that sort of thing, so that people can interact with each other. If you were to do sort of online learning more formally, for example, at the Open University, then we have what we call blended learning. So we have a mixture of online where you can engage with other students, whether formally within the context of sort of Open University forums, or as Marie says, in terms of Facebook. And then sometimes you can actually meet your tutor and also other students face to face as well. So there is a mix. This is what we mean by blended learning. It's a mixture of sort of online, face to face, and then written materials. I quite like Marie's comment about the time spent, and I think we'll come on to that in a second, because quite a few people have asked about sort of how the time given to the course and whether that's correct or not. So, but I'll just take one of the questions from the Q&A. So one of the things here is about how should we prevent hacking through online learning, and is it worth creating another email just for learning online? So I think that's a very good point, actually. I mean, some people suggest that you have a different sort of persona online as opposed to real life. And some people, for example, create a different date of birth, create a different address or something like that, so that there isn't a question of hacking. I mean, certainly as far as I understand, what goes on in FutureLearn, there is no sort of personal data as such, so it is protected. But I would say that there's not a bad idea actually to have a different online identity. And certainly people always say, I mean, this is fairly obvious, but if you are online, particularly in a place where the internet connection isn't private, such as like a McDonald's or something like that, then never do anything that will reveal personal information about you, and certainly not bank information. I think most of you probably know that, but it's quite a good idea, Tiara. So we'll come on to another one now. I'll just get rid of this one, just say done. You have to click it, see, so that's why I'm busy looking over here. So we'll just have a look at the other one. And as I mentioned, quite a few of you have raised issues about the time to do the move. So we have a question here from Steffi saying that it says sort of 3 hours, but she thinks that 2 to 4 hours would be a better idea, because there are people who speak English as a second language. There are people who are, say, disabled, who might take longer to go through the same material. We also have, I think, Tracy has also mentioned, I mean, she mentioned spending hours and hours on the discussions, but I don't think she realised quite how long it would take either. And then we're saying about someone else saying, Maria, I think it was, saying about you really need to spend twice as long as you anticipate doing. I think the timing is a difficult one. I mean, we do try and give an indication of how long it will take, and that's often based on the number of words. So when we originally write the course, we do it sort of still on paper still, really, and we're given an idea of steps, and we're saying how many words make up a step, and then how many steps make an hour. And I think a lot of this depends on the experience of the individual. So if you're very used to online learning, you might just click through very quickly. If you speak English as a second language, or if you have a disability, for example, it might take you longer. I do think, however, that Steffi's idea of putting, say, 2 to 4 hours might not be a bad one, actually. I do agree with you, Steffi, that it might be useful, perhaps not when it's first advertised. So I think perhaps using one number, say 3, just to give people a sense of how long it'll take, that it's a slightly shorter MOOC. And then, but within the description saying, well, we've said 3, but actually you need to think somewhere between 2 and 4 hours, depending on your skill level, and depending on who you are as an individual. So I thought that on board, Steffi, and I think for the next iteration of this MOOC, then we'll do that. So I'll just come on to another one here. So this is Tiny M. I hope I've got the name right there. So this is a question here, which is, why is online learning as expensive as any master's course that can be found on campus? I'm not entirely sure of our master's fees. I think they're roughly the same as the undergraduate ones. Certainly undergraduate fees are at the Open University are cheaper than they are at a face-to-face institution. It's a very difficult one, because although you aren't physically on campus, then you're still in effect receiving the support from a tutor, the materials and that sort of thing. So there are certain things that probably are cheaper about providing online in terms of the institution, but there is also, as a student, certainly at our institution, you still receive a tutor. That tutor will have no more than 20 students in their tutor group, and so there is still a level of support that the fees would then cover. I think there's also a case, one of the things is that distance learning has developed a lot over the last 50 years. And I think in the past, a long time ago, had a sense that it perhaps wasn't of the same standard as other universities. And I think by charging the same fees. And I think one of the things they're trying to say is that we are the same, standard as other institutions. So I can't really answer your question there really, Tiny, but I think there's just other ways of looking at it in terms of the cost and what you actually get for your money, in terms of support, materials, the provision that particular university offers you, whether it's an learning or an online university or a campus-based university. So I hope that sort of answered your question. So I'll just click done, and then I'll come back to some of the other questions that you have here. And please do bring any send any more questions in if you have them, because I'm more than happy to deal with them. So I'll just click through here. Oh, one of the things related to the time spent, we've got a question here related, or a comment rather, from Patience saying about she's also struggling with doing the course and the amount of time indicated, and particularly the last couple of days have been very busy. I think that's one of the issues with online learning. It's the same with all learning, in the sense that you have deadlines to reach, to meet. You have to do things at certain times. But I think when you are not within a sort of an environment where everyone is doing the same thing, like you would be, say, at a campus-based university, then I think structuring your time is more difficult. So you have to make sure that you really set time aside. And I think some of you have made comments about this in the forum, saying about how you're structuring your time, you're sort of allocating 2 hours a night or whatever. That's really important. And it's also really important that you build in time just in case things go wrong. Because things do happen. I mean, one of the things about a university like ours, a distance university, is a lot of our students are older, they have families, they work. So things will happen in their lives that may not apply to, say, an 18-year-old at a campus-based university. And that's why it's really important that you think about the time you have to spend, whether that time will be, sort of protected by you and the rest of your family. There's no point you thinking, I'm going to spend 2 hours this evening, and then someone comes in and leaves the washing up, because then you're going to have to spend time doing the washing up. So, one of the things I made comments about, and the thing commented on by certainly our students, is that the family and the people around you are just as important in helping you find that time and the space to study as you are. So I've just come another one. It says here, I've got a question again from Tiny. Are the scholarships available for online students, or for student accommodation, would be an online student be eligible for it? Well, in relation to the latter, I'd probably say no, because if you're online, then you're not at a campus, so you wouldn't need accommodation. In relation to scholarships for online students, then yes, it depends on the institution. So certainly we at the Open University have free places on our access modules. These are for students who are perhaps have been out of education for a long time, lacking confidence, and they are pre-university level courses, and we have some places on those that are free depending on your level of income, and you would need to be a UK well, but it's worth having a look, Tiny. So if you look at any online courses that are available, and I'm thinking particularly about degree level courses here, rather than things like the MOOCs, then you may find that there are sort of scholarships or bursaries available for you. So I would say yes to the first and no to the second. So I've noticed someone else put a question up, but I'll come back to the questions and answers from before, and then I'll come back to the Q&A board. So the next one, some comments are related to skills development. So Susan says, this is the first time I've done anything like this online. I'm finding it interesting, easy to follow so far. I've never used a Google Hangout. Well, it was new to me as well, Susan, but we'll see if I like it. And another one is Pang says, how do we avoid misleading links to other websites while we are searching for educational ones? So I've put those together because I think one of the things that's come out of the MOOC and looking at your comments on the forums is different skills that you have to use. So you use skills from online searching, you use skills such as evaluating to decide whether something is useful or not. And as Susan points out, you also need to come onto a Google Hangout, which some of you may not have done before. In relation to Pam's question about how do you know whether something is of value or not, then I think that's a question of reading through the information that you find and assessing whether it does what you want it to do. So if you're looking for an educational website because you want to find out a particular, say about online learning, then I think it's looking through it. Does it give you, does it provide enough information? Is the information of good quality? Now that's, as you get more used to finding things online, that becomes easier. You may be interested that there is a course that we provide free on our OpenLearn platform with the Open University that's called Succeeding in a Digital World, and that will take you through the process. I mentioned some of these in the forums as well, so that will help you assess the quality of the sites that you come across. But I think it's a question of, if you have an idea in your mind about what you are wanting to find and a quick scan suggests it's something different, then obviously that's not for you. And a lot of them, obviously, so for example, in the UK, a higher education institution would have .ac.uk. And so that gives an idea that it's an academic institution. So it's things like even that, the URL can give you a hint about the nature of the institution. And it's worth finding, so like the Open University is quite well known, near places like Oxford, Cambridge. So if you find the institution as well is well known, then you're likely to find those sites more sort of trustworthy, I suppose, than you might if you didn't know them. So I'll just see what we've got here. So we've got one from Joseph. How are assessments done, particularly final exams? Are these done online or one has to appear physically at an exam centre? That is a really good question, Joseph. And the answer, certainly in our institution, is that you would have to appear at an exam centre. Although I must say that certainly for our year one students, that a lot of what we do is continuous assessment, and that is done online. So you would do it, say, for example, as an essay, and that can be submitted online and then is marked by your tutor and sent back to you online through what we call a sort of an assignment system. In terms of the exams, however, particularly in subjects like health and social care, where it's often related to, you really need to know who a person is, physically, and check their identity against their passport, then often we require students to go to an exam centre to do that. And certainly within the United Kingdom, there are exam centres all over the country. And so if you are doing a particular module with the Open University, then you will be sent to an exam centre that isn't too far from your home, probably within about an hour. Certainly that's what's happened to me when I've been studying with the Open University. But that raises a very good question there. It's probably worth saying actually one final thing is that we do some what we call interactive sort of computer marked assessments. So but they're not final exams. They're more things that you can do online that help you to structure your learning, answer a few questions about what you've learned so far. So that's also often part of assessment with an online university, but exams are often face-to-face, and you will be sent to an exam centre to do those. So I'll just come back to our questions here. So some of the other questions relate to payment. So have ideas about his first online course that he's ever taken, and he's finding it interesting from an educative. So I'm glad you found that as the case, Isaac. He's saying about what bothers him is payment for the certificate and whether there's a deadline to pay. Gracietta also asks a very similar question, which relates to the, when she buys the certificate. And I think I want to thank Marie here, who said, that she provided some information about this, saying that you don't need to buy a certificate at the time. You can do so, afterwards. But I do want to say as well that you do not need to buy a certificate. So this course, this MOOC, is offered free of charge, and you can study it free, learn, free of charge. If you do want a certificate, then FutureLearn does charge for that. But that's entirely up to you. So don't feel that you need to pay for a certificate. If that's not useful for you, then that's fine. There's absolutely no option to do so. So it's worth having a look. I think the information is on the FutureLearn site, so do have a look, but don't feel obliged to. I think it's probably worth doing a bit of a plug on our OpenLearn site, which I mentioned earlier on. We have what we call badged open courses. These are courses that are designed for sort of entry-level students, so sort of first years or just pre-university level. And they are badged, so you can get a little Mozilla compatible badge. And they are free, and the statement of participation also on OpenLearn is free. So if you want a statement of participation and want to do some other learning, then it may be worth having a look at OpenLearn or perhaps some of the other MOOCs that are available. As I said, FutureLearn does charge for its statement of completion, but others may not, and I think it depends how much you feel that certificate to you. Is it going to help? Is it going to perhaps prove that you can learn at a certain level? Then that's fine, it may be worth investing in. But if it's not, then I think you can just describe the experience that you've had, say on a CV or something, to show that you have learned, and that may be sufficient for you. So anyhow, I hope that's answered your question, Isaac. So we've got another question here, I'll just read it. Oh, I think I must have forgotten about this one. I've just done this one here. This is from Tiny, so it's related to the scholarships for online learning. So I've just answered that question. I'll click done on that one. So unless anyone has any more questions, we're just coming to the final sort of question here. So I'll just look at this one, and this is from Christopher. It says, if my course is online, what books can I get to study extra for my course, and where can I find tutors' details, as it's not online yet, and tutorials? Okay, Christopher, I get the impression you're probably maybe starting or about to study an OT module. Case welcome. But if you're waiting for another online course, then they probably act in a similar way. So I'll give you an idea about how it works here, and that may be transferable to the institution that you're hoping to study at. So in relation to books to study extra, most of the time, if you are registered on a formal module or course at a university, so an online university, then normally you'll be sent a sort of reading list or something to prepare for it. Now, in some cases, particularly early on in your studies, you may not be sent anything. So it's probably, if you haven't been sent anything yet or nothing is available yet, then don't worry. I think it could be that perhaps you're not expected to do any preparatory work. Once you're on the module, then there may be things that your tutor alerts you to. Certainly I'm a tutor at the Open University, and I'll point my students to any best. Also things like television, radio programs. My speciality is linguistics, sociolinguistics, and so if there's anything that sounds interesting for them, then I will point them in that direction. And certainly you will often receive a book, a sort of a textbook as part of your studies. My module does 4 of them for the, for a 6-month module, and there will be lots of reading in there that will be sort of excerpts of books, and then you can probably, if you wish to, you can go and read up more about those things. So additional reading will come from a variety of sources, so perhaps a reading list, things from the module book itself that you may want to further, or something that your tutor, for example, mentions that then you can follow up on. And in relation to the second part of your question, which is to do with when your tutor details are released, I'm not exactly when that happens, the Open University, but it's probably about a month or sort of 3 weeks before you start your module, so it's quite late. You should start to receive your materials fairly soon. We say, for example, if your module starts in October, then you should start to receive your module material certainly in September, and then you will also get information about your tutor, and then you'll be given access to the module website, which is where all the study calendar, the forums, everything like that is, that you can sort of engage with other students on and find out more about the course. So I think it's a question of not worrying. If you're registered, you will be sent stuff, and you should get it in plenty of time. If, for example, that you have a particular need, say, for example, you may be dyslexic and think that you would prefer to get the materials sooner, it's worth, and this probably applies to other universities, then it's always worth contacting your local contact for the university and asking if any materials are available slightly earlier, so that you can prepare. But most of the time they'll be sent probably about sort of 3 weeks or perhaps a month before your module starts, and that's when you can get to grips with all the things, like the library, the forums, the actual structure of the module that you're doing, and some of that I mentioned in the course itself. So I'm just checking. I've answered all the questions from your the Q&A, and I haven't had any more people submit questions. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found it helpful, and thank you for some very stimulating questions. It's been fun to answer them, and I'll be on the sort of discussion forums on the MOOC over the next couple of days, sort of seeing how you get you coming towards the end of the course and thinking about what you want to do next. Whether you want to do further MOOCs or whether you'd like to think about registering for more formal study. I find it really interesting, what people want to do and how many people are sort of taking, several MOOCs one after the other, or some of you are thinking of have already registered rather at the Open University and are hoping to study. So regardless of how you study or how you learn, I do wish you luck in future, and I hope you still continue to enjoy it, and I will see a few of you sort of virtually on the forum over the next few days. And thank you so much for joining me, and thank you very much, Joseph. That's very kind. Joseph just said thank you. Right, thank you then, and goodbye. And I'll just stop the broadcast.